What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 36, and I'm the host, Kyle Anzalone. Another solo show today, but I got a lot of great stuff to talk about. Make sure, everyone, you're subscribing to the new feeds. I know there are still some people downloading the show off the old foreign policy focus feeds. I am taking a little bit of time before I upload them there and doing it in batches. So if you want the shows right as they release Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you do that by signing up to the new conflict of interest feed. Best thing to do though is go to YouTube and subscribe to the show there. That way you get the video version of it. Now let's get into today's news. First story I have is not a good one at all. This is from Reason. CJ Caramella, I believe is how you say his last name. Arkansas cop shoots family dog after going to wrong address. And yes, it's about as horrible as it sounds, or maybe even worse. This is a statement from the owner of the dog. My daughter was coming to the door and said somebody was in the driveway. Just a blue pickup unmarked. Before I even went around the corner here, I heard a shot, and the officer had shot my dog right here in the yard for barking at him. My girlfriend watched it out the window. The dog was not attacking him. The dog was barking in my yard on my on private property. So this is pretty horrific, just to start with that, you have a cop go to somebody's house for whatever reason and just shoots the dog. I mean, even if the guy inside is like cooking meth or something like that, unless you have like no other choice, I don't think officers should just be shooting rounds at dogs who are innocent animals. And even in the case where the dog is maybe a trained attack dog or something like that, you gotta try not to shoot the dog. But it sounds like this guy hopped out of his vehicle at what he thought was the right house. It wasn't, and just shot around into the dog. It seems like if you watch the video, I don't think you actually see the shot on the video from what I could tell. So the story may change a little bit. The police release a body camera or something like that. But the officer is back by his truck, and the body of the dog is well over 25 feet away. I mean, it seems like it would be easier for the officer just to hop back into his car. Well, it ends up being even worse because they went to the wrong address. And so here you have the case where it's not even people who were doing anything wrong, as well as the innocent dog that's the victim here. But this innocent little girl saw her dog murdered. I mean, I don't know. I have a little puppy, and I don't know what I would do. One of the things I'm always surprised about when these stories happen is that like the cop never, anybody doesn't go after the cop, or the cops end up having to kill a guy too because he tries to take a shot at the cops or something like that. Because I mean, I imagine that a lot of people, their dogs are like, real member of the family, part of their children, and to see it just murdered for absolutely no reason has to be one of the most infuriating things that could happen. And this isn't a rare occurrence. If you're watching the video here, you'll see that Reason actually has a category of news story called Puppy Side. Talk about just the widespread and rampant cases of cops killing dogs. It's really just unbelievable how frequently it happens. And a lot of times, cops are able to shoot multiple dogs and never really run afoul of any of the rules of their department or anything like that. And so, you could imagine if these cops are heartless enough to shoot an innocent creature, like a dog that's really not threatening them, when it's a person. And like, well, I think a human life is definitely worth more than a dog's life in pretty much every circumstance. um like, we gotta be honest here that a lot of the times a dog is a completely innocent creature, and humans are flawed beings, and have intentionally committed acts to harm others and stuff like that, or are doing things that are obviously reckless, and could kill a cop or something like that. And so whenever the cop then has an opportunity to shoot someone in that situation, I had to imagine these itchy trigger finger guys put down a lot of people that way. So really disturbing to me when a cop shoots a dog, not just because of the dead innocent animal, but what this I think means for the psychology of police officers and stuff like that. In this particular police department, last January, the article notes a Faulkner County Sheriff's deputy was fired and charged with animal cruelty, I believe, after he shot a small dog because the owner refused to walk outside to talk to him. And then the deputy was fired, but the police department said, or the sheriff's office in this case, said that it did not appear to violate any of their actual rules. And so, I guess it's horrific enough that you don't want to, work with somebody who shoots. And I don't actually believe he killed this dog, but did shoot it, which was, not in any way harming him, was enough to get them to remove them. Sometimes the sense of being responsible, going on taxpayers financially. There's a case that a reason documented in St. Louis last year where the county, I believe it was the county, not the city, paid out $775,000 to a woman whose dog was shot during a no-knock SWAT raid over an unpaid gas bill. If you could ever imagine that you're somebody so poor that you can't pay your gas bill, and then the cops kick down down your door and shoot your dog. God, it's just really terrible what happens. The last thing I'll point out here from this story that said that the Justice Department official speculated in a 2012 interview with Police Magazine that the number of dogs killed by police every year could be as high as 10,000, calling it an epidemic. But they don't actually know what the numbers are, and it's a guess because nobody actually keeps track of it. Because that would mean reporting bad things about police officers. All right, everybody. With that, really sad news to start off today's show, take a quick moment to thank the sponsor of the show, which is Paloma Verde. At Paloma Verde, they sell great CBD products that are, accurately dosed and everything like that. You know what you're getting. They have lab results. They did they do their products the right way over there, and they work great. One of the really tough things about doing the work that I do and reading about puppy sides all the time is sometimes it gets you down, and the CBD occasionally will help to take the edge off just a little bit. With some of the more disturbing stories like the puppy side stuff. So yeah, check out their products over at Paloma Verde. They have gel capsules, extracts, gummies, even stuff for your dog. I might look into giving my dog some CBD. Who knows? Anyways, yeah, check out their products. If you spend $75 or more, you can get 25% off by using the code PEACE, PEACE, at checkout. And really, if you're somebody who uses CBD, think about giving Carlos and his wife Vanessa your business. They're great people and libertarians, and you're supporting a great cause when you help to support their business. So, with that, let's get back to the episode. All right, so the next article I have here is by Mark Perry and is greatly titled "The Revenge of Colonel Douglas McGregor." And what Mark Perry does here, and I'll also be talking a little bit about an article by Barbara Boland at the American Conservative, and it's talking about what's going on at the Defense Department post Trump losing the election. And so, a lot of people, chat marks on Twitter, are wildly speculating that Trump is engaging in a coup. And while they have no real evidence of this other than just personnel changes and the speculation of their friends and colleagues and stuff like that, um they get no fat checks or anything like that. They're just allowed to say this. So anyways, they're crying coup and stuff like that. But these two articles do a really good job of breaking down a couple things: what the personnel changes are, who ends up leaving, and what it seems like the reason why is, and that's over troop drawdown that Trump wanted to do, and some of his employees pushed back against. And so, there was an article in the past couple weeks by Mark Esper talking about how, if Trump just said something, if he didn't sign an order, that he, really just ignored it. If Trump was tweeting something, he just ignored it. And so That's kind of concerning because this is the president of the United States, the man responsible for making American defense policy, and here he is just ignoring what the president's defense policy is, even though as Secretary of Defense, it's his job to carry it out. It's especially troubling when we're talking about things like withdrawing troops and stuff like that. And we're on, at least on Twitter and what we hear in public from Donald Trump, it seems like he, is telling them that, we're not debating this. This isn't like something he floated in the back room privately. But, he's saying like, hey, we are withdrawing our troops from Syria. They'll say, we don't take this seriously, and then don't follow through with it. And so that it seems like those are the main reasons that Esper ends up getting fired. And here he brings in Christopher Miller to be Secretary of Defense. Anthony Tata, I believe is how you say his name, gets an appointment, and then one of Michael Flynn's acolytes is also now in the administration. But most importantly, we have Douglas McGregor being appointed to as a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense. Now we know that it's not going to be a complete drawdown of troops from Afghanistan or Iraq. We have a report today, and I believe the official report from the Pentagon, the order is to draw down to 2,500 troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. That will bring about 1,000 troops home from Iraq and another 2,000 home from Afghanistan, if I had that right. There are 4,500 and 3,500 there. And so this is a step in the right direction. The troops are supposed to be home by January 15th. But that being said, it's not ending the war, which is, I think, what needs to happen to prevent Biden from coming in and, finding different ways to extend this war. So, it's good to see that, this is a step in the right direction, and, that, the appointment of McGregor and everything. That, this is the kind of the Trump policy that you were hoping for all along, right? Is that if his subordinates said, are dragging their feet on bringing our troops home, that Donald Trump's going to say, the hell with this, the hell with you. I'm bringing our troops home today. That's the plan. And if you won't do it, I'll find somebody who will. And eventually he would get into people like Douglas McGregor and Christopher Miller, who seem to be willing to at least start to do this. Now, my guess is that the Biden administration will not keep either of these guys in their positions. And we're looking at the lights of like Michelle Flournoy and Susan Rice coming into the picture, which I don't think bodes well for continuing to bring troops home. I know in the past couple of days, a lot of people have been talking about, Donald Trump 3D chess. This is what he said he was going to do all along, kind of stuff. But if we're going to be honest, that's not who Donald Trump ever was. As much as it was right to hope and encourage him to be that president that was going to end these wars, he really never was either that serious or his heart wasn't into it, because he doesn't end up ending any of them in 4 years. And even if he draws down these even more, that's great. Putting McGregor in this position, that's great. At the same time, it's not enough. I guess the last couple of things I will mention here is that maybe 2,500 was what McGregor and Christopher Miller felt like was possible, battling the Pentagon bureaucracy over the next couple of months, for them to withdraw down to. Maybe it was just going to be impossible to do it any faster, with everybody taking their day and a half to process the paperwork or whatever the hell, to slow the thing down a little bit until the end of the administration. And then also they're cutting it close. On January 15th, the government never completes a project on time. And so, if it ends up being a week late, then you're looking at the Biden administration, and maybe we don't get the drawdown to happen at all. But that said, if you read this article by Mark Perry, you will realize that McGregor is not only intelligent, it may, have some viewpoints that I certainly don't agree with, and I'm sure a lot of listeners don't agree with, like wanting, I think, to declare martial law at the southern border and stuff like that. What it seems like he's devoting his attention to here is drawing down the troops, which is great. And as being, apparently one of the Pentagon's best thinkers, maybe he's the guy that could actually get this done. I think that's all I have on the McGregor story. I want to move on to talk about this article. I believe I got it from Defense One, and it's been the talk of a lot of places. It's about the former U.S. envoy to the Syrian conflict, Jim Jeffries, and some interesting comments he made. At the start of the article, they highlight that Jeffries was a never Trumper and signed the Never Trump letter before Trump came in, but ends up getting the envoy position anyways. And then, even though he opposed the president's foreign policy, he says that the president's support of what he describes as successful real approach to the region, and acknowledges that he routinely misled senior leaders about troop levels in Syria. And so it's basically saying that he misled his superiors about the troop number in Syria. And I mean, this is real scandalous, right? Like, he's now out here bragging about this, and in fact, getting commended for it by a lot of people from like the U.S. foreign policy blob. But even with him you know getting this commendation from like the mainstream establishment, actually thinking about what happened here is rather disturbing. We talked about Mark Esper dragging his feet. Well, this is somebody even lower down the line. This is just the U.S. envoy to Syria, and here you have the president giving an order, and this guy who's not elected, and he may have to have getting confirmed by the Senate and everything like that, but still, he's the envoy to Syria. People don't think should be making U.S. Syria policy, and that's essentially what he did by lying and saying that we had roughly 200 troops there when that just wasn't the case, and made sure that we never actually ended that war. And man, I was watching part of the problem, and Dave Smith and Robbie Bernstein were talking about this, and Robbie Bernstein, being somewhat of a comedian, made a joke, but I think it's a pretty decent idea actually, and that is the American people should be able to sue Mr. Jeffrey here and say, listen, we're only supposed to have 200 troops there, so the cost of those additional 700 troops, since you're essentially the person that gave the order to keep them there, that tab is on you. And if any U.S. troops die or have died in that time, or the more than the 200, that those deaths are on you. He should be held accountable for that. Unfortunately, that won't happen. Like I said, he ends up getting praised. The other crazy thing is him going in another Trumper. He's coming out, I guess, a pro-Trumper, and saying that the Biden administration should stick with the Trump foreign policy in the Middle East. And when you look at what Trump's foreign policy for the Middle East was, you could look at it in kind of two ways. In one way, you see the president tweeted some really good things about ending wars. He backed down from launching strikes against Iran because of the toll after Iran responded with missile attacks after the U.S. The big mistake was assassinating the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani on Iraqi soil. But once that was done, he allowed the missile exchange to happen without a response, which there were times where Trump could have escalated in the Middle East, and didn't do that. I believe he really did shut down, for the most part, the U.S. support to the jihadists, the armed opposition to Assad in Syria. So, there are a couple things that Trump did right. But what Jeffrey is talking about is how the Trump policy actually played out, which was just continuing all the wars that he inherited and leaving U.S. troops in the Middle East. I'm sure threatening the Iranians is something that Jeffrey is a big fan of. And that's really the worst part about Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East, I think, when we look back on it, will be ruining the Iran deal. I think we'll look back on that, maybe not in the same way with George Bush getting out of the agreed framework with North Korea, because I don't think the Iranians are going to try to build a nuclear weapon. I think the politics of the region is different with Israel, who I think would nuke Iran before allowing Iran to build a nuke. And but at the same time, where you had this deal that would have relatively locked in Iran's nuclear program to make sure it's civilian, it takes the potential of war off the table, and rather getting out of that perfectly good deal, as Trump did with the JCPOA, sets the U.S. and Iran on a long-term collision course, kind of how we are now with North Korea, where it's going to take, real outside the Washington foreign policy, the DC blob establishment thinking, to change it. We had the consensus after Bush kicked them out of the agreed framework with North Korea was, well, you can't talk to them until they get rid of their nuclear weapons, and Obama had this policy of strategic patience. And then Trump first adopts a policy of maximum pressure and threatening very publicly North Korea, but then goes and meets with the leader and talks about potentially making some progress and developing better relations with North Korea. And so um if it's now the case that the Biden administration will demand of the Iranians to return to all their commitments to the JCPOA before the U.S. decides to lift any of the sanctions, or I think Iran has a good case that the US would have to lift the sanctions and then allow the Iranians to re-enter the agreement and all their commitments to it kind of slowly, since the US it's technically out of it. But if that doesn't happen, the Biden administration makes a lot of demands here. We could see years of strategic patience, which I think that's the name of the policy, and it sounds kind of smart. But what it really is putting hostilities on the back burner on low and letting them simmer, rather than trying to address the situation in a way to take war off the table. And I'm very concerned about that's what's going to happen during the Biden administration with Iran. And I think that's, again, getting back to the original story here, what James Jeffrey is talking about, that the Biden is just going to continue a lot of Trump's policies and why he endorsed it. All right, moving on here to talk about Iran and something very disturbing that happened with Trump. And so, when I talk about Trump's foreign policy a lot, sometimes I try to find ways to, like, make it sound hopeful and encouraging, because I don't want to just be bleak and be like, oh, Trump's never gonna do anything right and he's just an idiot. And when he tweets something that's like end war, you should say, ah, that's great. And so, those are the qualities about Trump that I don't say like I love Donald Trump or anything, but those are the qualities about Donald Trump that people I think could find somewhat appealing. The qualities about Donald Trump that terrify me are stuff like this, which is apparently last week, Trump asked for options for attacking Iran, but then decided to hold off. And apparently, Trump, after losing the election, was looking for options on attacking Iran's main nuclear reactor site. And I mean, this would be a huge escalation and would be starting a war with Iran. I mean, this would be a huge usurpation of presidential powers to just start a war over something that at least in the past they used the pretense of the 2001 authorization for use of military force, and it makes no sense to use that to claim that it justifies the war with the Houthis in Yemen, and it's actually backwards to say that, but at least that's the justification. There's no justification to start this conflict. It's purely an offensive war against a civilian nuclear program. I guess to appease Trump's base. I'm not really sure why he would do this. Um, Either that or the people around him, again, as we see from James Jeffrey, don't feed him accurate information. So maybe they really scared Donald Trump to the point where he thought he had to do this. But either way, he did this and met with Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo, Christopher Miller, Mark Milley, were the people in attendance. I'm not sure if Mitt Master was in attendance, but apparently Trump really pushed for it, and they talked him out of it. But he did ask for options, and so that's the really disturbing thing, is that as much as you want to say that, oh, maybe Trump's impulsiveness and his quote unquote thinking outside the box on foreign policy and stuff means that we could get out of some wars. But it's also that kind of impulsiveness and just doing whatever that could lead him to just start a war impulsively or something like that. And it's a good thing this didn't happen. But I don't know, hopefully, again, as I said before, Biden's policy on Iran could be better. But I'm concerned it's actually going to make matters a little bit worse. Last story before I wrap up here, and that is Trump plans a series of actions against China before Biden inauguration. This one's by Dave DeCamp, and I thought it was a little bit of a follow up to the episode I did last with Dave, so this will be kind of quick. But I just want to highlight what he writes here, and that is the Trump administration is planning a series of hardline actions against China with the aim of making policy untenable for a Biden administration to reverse moves. And so that there's a couple interesting parallels here. First, with what Trump's I think plan for Iran is with adding a whole bunch of more sanctions leading up to the election, at least if you could believe the Axios report. And then also what the Obama administration did to Trump as he was leaving office by kicking and expelling a whole bunch of Russian ambassadors out of our country. Um, so this is going to receive some tensions and blowback with the U.S. relationship with China. My concern is that Biden, at least from what he said, he wants to be more hawkish against China than Trump was, and so I'm not sure what ramping up tensions with China would mean. But I'm really seeing the possibility here that you're going to have the conservatives, or I don't want to say conservatives, the Fox News watchers, right? The general Republicans are going to be, oh, Biden is so soft on China, just like the MSNBC crowd was saying, oh, Donald Trump is so soft on Russia, and Biden's going to take a more aggressive policy than Trump did towards China. We've already seen this with his, I guess, telling. First of all, the South Korean people that he's not going to withdraw any U.S. troops, and then the Japanese prime minister that he would defend the Senkaku Islands, which are disputed with China. The other thing we have here, another story, this one from Jason Ditz, but also a little bit of a follow up, some of the stuff that Dave DeCamp was talking about on the last show. And this is National Security Advisor declares Huawei the number one concern. And so you have this Chinese company. It's a technology company that deals in 5G and stuff like that. And they're saying it's the number one concern. Really, if the U.S. is so concerned with China getting ahead of us on technology, we got to stop flushing so much of our money. And a lot of our money that goes into like developing technology and stuff like that is all going into these weapon systems that don't work, that are useless. You're talking about the F-35, the Ford class of aircraft carriers, the Zumwalt class of destroyers. All these weapon systems have major flaws, which make them almost absolutely useless in battle. With the lifts on the aircraft carriers not working, the multitude of problems still existing for the F-35 and the Zumwalt class of destroyers still not having a main weapon. It's quite crazy to think that the problem is that we're not doing like enough with our military, and that we need more confrontation with China. When I think it's clear that what we need to do is not provoke China and look more towards just allowing the money to be in our markets, in the hands of the people for civilian needs, to develop technologies that make us all wealthier. They develop a new iPhone and everybody gets it, that's great. And stuff like that. So that's where money should be going, to technologies that are for civilian usage, not all of these things. Oh, we could shoot a missile out of the sky with our missiles. Like, forget that. Just stop destroying the nuclear agreements with Russia and work to get rid of these damn weapons, rather than trying to get better and waste more money shooting missiles out of the sky. So with that, I think that's about all I have. Oh, I did have one note. A couple days, or I think it was the episode with Dave DeCamp, but it may have been the episode before the episode I did with Pete Quinones. I had in the news ticker that there was an American journalist named Austin Tice, I believe, and he was freed in an agreement between the Trump administration and the Syrian government. Apparently that didn't happen, or at the very least it's not public yet. There's a couple people I saw on Twitter reporting it who are Mideast reporters, and so I stuck it in the news ticker, but that turned out not to be true. So just want to make sure I'm keeping up to date and correcting if I did anything or had something wrong in the show. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna wrap. I hope everybody enjoyed it. What I need you to do is subscribe to the show on YouTube, Conflicts of Interest. Follow me on Twitter at Kyle Anslow _. Support our sponsor, Paloma Verde. Buy their products, palomaverdestore.com. When you support Paloma Verde, especially if you use promo code PEACE, it's also supporting this show. And you get some great CBD products. Facebook, there's a page, and then patreon.com/conflicts. Thanks, everyone.